Okay, so we are into the section now where we are going to sculpt in wear and tear and dents and grime and rust, and we're going to sculpt in lots of destruction because at the moment our vehicle is looking what I would say very pretty. If I can turn on these layers here. Alright, so you can see it's going very slow. We literally have about 4 million triangles, 4.5 million triangles here. This will probably stay about the same actually. So we're going to be sculpting, and when we finish sculpting, my guess is we will have perhaps 20 million triangles. Um, but it will come down. We will bake those to normal maps. We'll bake down the rivets onto a normal map. We'll leave them there, of course, but yeah, we will bake them down. So yeah, what we're going to do is start off by sculpting in a lot of grime onto these panels and just getting them all looking all nasty. Sculpting in scratches and dents and bullet holes and everything like that. So I've first gone and put all of these onto layer 19. So I've duplicated them to layer 19. And that is simply for how to say this? It's sort of like a backup. So if we screw up a panel, we can just go grab another one and start again. And yeah, that's sort of how that works. So we are going to grab a panel, and we can probably turn on, yeah, we're going to turn on the solidify at this stage. So apply that, and we end up with this. Now we remove that subdivision surface. We no longer want to use subdivision surface. We will now use a multi-resolution. So we subdivide twice, and this brings it back to exactly the same as a subsurf, but we can now sculpt it. I mean, you can sculpt the other ones, but you can't sculpt them as well. So not the same. So we're going to use a brush. Now we're going to jump into Photoshop and make this brush. We could even do this in Blender actually, but it's effectively what we want is a clay tubes brush. Now this is something you can, that's been available for download from Blender Cookie for a while, but I'm just going to show you how to make one from scratch anyway. Okay, so it is a 256 by 256 image. You can use whatever size you want. This size is more than enough. And what we're going to do is we are going to select a region in the middle here. So if we just select everything and go select, modify, and we can do border, and bring that in perhaps about 15 pixels. There we go. Shift I, and we're just going to create a new layer. We didn't even need to do that actually, we could have just filled it in. So we're going to fill that with white and fill the background with black. Okay. Alright, so effectively we have a black and white layer now. And what we're going to do is just bring this in a fraction down to like that. And because a blurry mask is going to be much better than a flat one, we're just going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and blur it out something like that. Okay, now we go. File, save as. and we'll create a new folder called textures, new folder in here called brushes, and this one here is going to be a JPEG, will be fine, and I'm just going to call this clay tubes and click OK. Alright, so if we come down to texture, create a new texture, this one here we're going to call clay tubes. In our texture settings we can jump over to the brush panel, and we're going to use an image or movie and open up that one we're looking for. Alright, so this is going to be under textures, brushes, clay tubes. Alright, and we get this thing coming up, and if we make this quite strong, it will paint in the clay tubes look, which is fantastic. We also want to change angle to rake, and that will make it follow our brush effectively. So we can make the size quite small, it's about the size we want it, and we'll throw an extra multi-resolution in there, so we're up to 3 now. And we can now sculpt in some stuff. Alright, so turn that down, and yeah, one other thing we're going to do is we're going to sharpen up this edge here. So if I come to the, not the polish, we want the, which one is it? I think it is a polish actually. Yeah, polish. Alright, so using the polish, we'll lock the area plane. And that is not doing it. Maybe it's this one. Alright, it was a polished one. The reason why it's not working is because this isn't a flat surface. Which is what this one does when you lock the area plane is, if we turn back to flatten, is effectively it will make this big flat area. And you can use it to sharpen up these creases and make them look a lot more metallic. We should be able to do that with just a pinch anyway. Yeah, pinch is working alright. So I really do like the way that the what's good, this one, the polish tool does, the way it gets the edge flat, but this one here does quite a nice job also. So you start from when you're doing the pinch, you start from where you want and then you go out towards and come in something like this. Just make it look very sharp, very metallic. You can start from straight up here as well, but sort of depends on the angle of whether it will work or not. So it's just turn that strength down a little. Isolate that one, and see we're getting a lot of issues through here. So my guess is we've got some weird issues there. So if I remove that multi-res, yeah, there we go. So you can see we're getting a few issues where we had the this here scaled to negative. So this one needs to be right around the top only. Just edge slide this back. And that is something you need to sort out before you go in and do any sculpting. Alright, so I'm just going to select these and go scale -1. Should pop up on the F3 menu as well. There we go. F3, repeat last action menu. Fantastic menu. I would recommend you use it as much as you can, because it does save a lot of time. Just make sure there's a bit of gap in between those. Okay, so with that there sorted, let's add in a multi-resolution modifier again. Alright, so we start the process by sharpening up these edges. If you have another sculpting software like Mudbox or ZBrush or Sculptress, you can feel free to use that also. For these tutorials, I will be using just the Blender Sculpt tools. Personally, I actually prefer Blender sculpting tools to a lot of software. It's I mean, it's not as good or high tech, but it's integrated in, and it, because it works directly with Blender's modifier system, it makes the process very easy to texture. Right, make sure you don't pinch these too tight. We want them quite tight, but we don't want them, see how I've got it here, it's very tight. We want them almost to that level. And this is something that we can do in modeling, but when you sculpt it, you get that very organic feel. Well, I mean, it is a mechanical surface, but I mean, when you get the organic feel to stuff, I mean, it gives you the brush strokes look, like it's been crafted properly. Okay, so we've got a few different options here. Area plane on with the polish. This one here, we use this to flatten out little bits like this. So say I want a flat area along here, I can come in and I can do that. You can also use the, where is it? and then come back in. I'm basically going to show you all the techniques on this one panel, by the way. We'll go through and do the entire thing, but I will likely time-lapse most of this, as it is a very extensive process, I suppose would be the word. Now grab, pull, this one here, use it very sparingly. If you do something like this, Blender's going to have a massive trouble with the normal maps later on. So yeah, that is fine like that. So if I just compare that with the original, if we go Shift D, Y, pull that across, move that and give that a subsurf level 2. That is the difference in a sculpted crease versus just a subsurf crease. So yeah, very organic, very nice looking. So on the back side here, I'm just going to jump in with the smooth tool, and I'm just going to smooth out these. This is the inside face, so it's not going to be seen, but it's good just to have it there. Or actually, this isn't. I was thinking this was a door panel. No, this is the armor. So we might actually come through with the pinch tool and just use very long brush strokes and crease it up. There we go. Now it looks like it's been bent over a panel. Yeah, just leave it like that for now. Okay. So let's subdivide it up another level. So we are at fairly decent count. We're at 60,000 faces just for this panel, which is 120,000 triangles, and that is perfectly fine. Alright, so we grab our clay tool, and you can see we can, if we turn that strength up a bit, we can draw some stuff on it and it comes out quite nice. Might need to subdivide that a higher level as well. There we go, now we're getting some fine details. Looks like I didn't undo those, so can I do them? Oh, well, smooth tool. It's cool. Okay, so back to the clay tool. What we do with this one is we are going to be putting in some dents and bullet holes. So stuff like, we'll turn that strength down a bit. Going to don't make them that uniform, by the way. So this is a very thick armoured door. So some of these panels are going to have a lot of dents, some not so much. These will all be normal mapped on. We'll keep a high res version, but normal maps will do fine for this. Alright, so dents like so. Now we'll grab our pinch tool. Should be able to, no, that's not going to work. The tool I normally use for this is the polish, but don't know how well it's going to. Yeah, the angles on this panel is going to throw it off completely. What the polish tool does is it will flatten out an edge very nicely. So grab the crease. Alright. And the crease tool is very good for doing scrapes and stuff, by the way. So you probably need to be on a high res. So this is how many polygons we have to play with, and that's not a whole lot. So you can subdivide up to level 6 and you can get some very nice sort of scrapes and stuff coming through. And obviously if you try and fill in a hole by doing the scrape, it looks horrible. But if you zoom in and do some little scratches and stuff, just coming across and going something like that. It's usually quite nice. So yeah, that's about all the tools. I'm sure the strength is up. Yeah, the strength is up way too high. Okay, so yeah, that's basically how to do those. The other thing to do is if we go out of isolated mode and we use the clay brush, throw it on a bit of a higher intensity and bigger size, lower intensity. What you can do with this is you can brush in some grunge. So there'll be a lot of grunge build up down here. And just building that up a bit. Up that strength, probably give it a heavier fall off. So probably not that much of a fall off. Something quite heavy. So that when we throw some grunge textures on here, we'll get a very nice sort of look to it. And if you find it's cutting in a bit too much, you can turn down that intensity. If you find it sticking out a bit too much, you can turn that intensity down a bit. And you can also switch over to the smooth to smooth out some portions as well. So yeah, that is basically it. Um, if you don't like some of those bullet holes, you can always use the smooth tool and just smooth them out. Perhaps some aren't as deep as others. I'm finding it quite intense at the moment, but from experience I know once you do the whole vehicle and get it textured, that really does help having just those dents and stuff in it like so. Okay, so switch back to object mode and it will disappear, and then you start on the next one. So you apply that, remove the subsurf, add in a multi-resolution, give it 5 levels is good for now. Then jump back into sculpt mode and notice how the other one isn't appearing. To have that appear while you're sculpting another one, you have to jump into it and you have to manually turn the preview all the way up to 6, and then it will appear. But that's really going to affect the performance of your system, especially once you get them all sculpted in and detailed. So I'm going to go ahead and sculpt over the whole vehicle and just these panels, and then we'll go over into the mechanics and we'll do a little bit there, especially the same thing. Actually, I might just time lapse this. Might as well. If you are not keen for watching time lapse, you guys can quite easily skip ahead. It's entirely up to you. Okay. Alright, so we're now at 800% time lapse, and we're going through and just sculpting up all of the panels. So it's just the same process as before. So yeah, just creasing up the edges and adding in some bits of dents and scratches and so on and so forth. I've also just added in a matte cap material which just helps for sculpting, and you can get the matte caps from blenderartist.org. Alright, so just a few scratches using the pinch tool there. Alright, now you notice that quite a few of the dents I put in here are actually quite deep. The deep dents are just to help make it a little more apparent that it is damaged rather than just having clean crisp edges, and it does help to build up that realism. You also notice with this one here, we will build up the area underneath the existing panels on top of it, just to act as a extra depth to grime. Also helps to be in non-local mode while building up grime, just so you can see where you need to build it up and where you can leave it. Okay, so just same techniques as before. We have the clay tubes to build up the mesh to make it more apparent that it is built up grime, and then we just cut away little pieces to give some cracks and cuts and stuff, and then you go over with the pinch tool over top of those to get them very nice and sharp and crisp. And just a few cracks and scratches. Notice that those scratches won't be very apparent when you do get them into the final product, but they do help to build up the realism. notice on these exterior panels that I'm building up some grime on areas that are not beneath other panels, and that just shows that there is dirt that will build up there, such as the mud that is flying up, dust and debris, and just general building up of other things than just built up grime from the other panels. To make sure that both sides are unique and you're not using a mirror. Mirror can help speed up the workflow, but when you're sculpting in damage, you really want to have them unique on both sides. So onto the other side now, and it is just the same process repeated. Notice that one there, we did just use a mirror, as it's underneath the other panels, and you really don't need to waste your time on that one. Alright, so moving through quite quickly now. As you can see, it takes a very long time to do this, and by the time you get 3/4 of the way around your vehicle, you will probably be speeding up a lot just to get it done, and that's perfectly fine. Usually you don't want to do that, but when you are doing damage, the natural speed up of you getting bored will actually show that parts of your mesh are cleaner than others and parts of them are more roughly done, and that is actually how it would happen in real life. So use that to your advantage. Be lazy. Sometimes it's quite good. You might also notice that we are painting in some gouges on the sharp areas of the mesh. Now you can paint them anywhere else you like, but on those pinched areas we have a very concentrated area of topology, and if we put those cuts in there, you get a much nicer result without having to have the full levels of detail to get to the cuts in anywhere else. Just roughening up the one on the front, make it look a little more damaged and more apparent that it has been sort of damaged by stuff. Now there will be a lot of built up grime on the front bumper. It will be pretty much over the entire thing, and you want to go in and just make your bullet dents and grunge it up quite a bit. Alright, now there's a gouge that I've made in the front there. I found that in the end result I didn't sharpen this one up enough, so you might want to make sure that you do have them quite sharp, as it looked a little bit more like it was dirt than metal. So do keep that in mind, that you want very sharp, crisp edges, and dents are dents, cuts are cuts, and they need to look as such. Also make sure you save often. I say that quite a lot, but it is very important that you save as much as you can. will stress that as I did sculpt this entire vehicle twice, being that I got to the end and hadn't saved it and Blender crashed. Or my computer crashed actually. So, yes, saving is very important. There's quite a lot of bullet dents on the back there, and you can see I've gone through and I've made some different sizes, some a bit sharper than others. That would be where the vehicle would be shot quite often. And adding in the motor resolution for the vents around the driver. Now we do actually go and replace those later on anyway, so you don't really need to worry too much about that one. And we'll move on to the main mesh. Now these ones are not going to be seen very much at all. It's basically if a panel gets broken off, we will see these ones underneath. So don't spend a lot of time. It's easier just to throw in a few dents and finish, as it's not particularly important. So do bear in mind when doing stuff like this, if you are going to skip over some sections, make sure you check with the art director first, and they will inform you if you need to actually go into detail with them. Okay, now the mechanics. I didn't spend a lot of time on the mechanics in the end. I felt that it wasn't overly important. It is a good idea to actually get that grunge and grime in there, but as they are not seen up close at all, it's a little bit redundant. Okay, now we're just going through and we are joining up that mesh, which I believe I skipped out actually, but I basically just went and cut the sections and merged them together. Alright, now on the wheels, add in the good old-fashioned curbing. Of course they wouldn't be curbed, but the scratches and stuff does show that they do get kicked, they do get scratched up by stuff. They're not perfectly clean wheels, but we will do most of that in texturing. Okay, so sculpting the weapon systems now. Just building up a bit of grunge and grime, and the standard procedure for these parts. If you want to know what button I'm pressing, by the way, at any time, let me know and I'll tell you what the shortcuts are. I have done time lapses before with the screencast keys on, and basically it was just a massive flicker of text on the bottom, so it's, yeah, not pretty. So yeah, if you want to know any particular shortcut in Blender, by all means, flick me an email or get in touch and I will get back to you. You can also find a big list of Blender shortcuts on blenderguru.com. Right, so on the top here, I've added in quite a bit of grunge and grime around the top, just to really accent that edge. And we'll move on to the interior. Alright, so just playing around with some modifiers there, rearranging them. Definitely have your solidify after your multi-res and have your lattice after your multi-res as well. Okay, so when sculpting the interior, you want to add in some scratches and you want to add in some little gouges and stuff and really just dent things in. Now I would recommend actually having holes in this and having some foam underlaying the underneath, and that will really give it some nice effect. Unfortunately I didn't have time to go through and do that, but I would recommend that you do that if you have time. Oh, and Blender crashed, so here we go again. Once again, the importance of saving. As you can see, I didn't save since I opened up the interior, so I'm doing this one again. And also this time decided to bump up those edges a little more and make them a little more prominent. And you can do that with the knife tool, or the crease tool as it is called in Blender. And then using the pinch and magnify tool, you can just pinch them down and make them look much more fabric-like. Similar to how we did on the panels. Okay, now around the edges there, we've actually just gone and added in some just stretch marks. So this is where the leather is being stretched and it's just pinched in on itself, just from people sitting in the seat. And it is good to have those in there. Alright, so for this one here, it's actually intersecting with the mesh a little, and I did originally try to just paint it out, but it is actually just easier to move the vertices around manually. Oh, there goes Blender again. Alright, so sculpting in some more scratches and stretch marks on the base. Just go through and add in a whole bunch, and then just come through and pinch them in to make them look a lot more fabric-like. Now this one here I tried to link together the modifiers and have it look unique, and it required a bit of tweaking. Probably would have been quicker just to do it again. Oh, that's right. You notice things get out of alignment when you go into sculpt mode. It's probably because you have a lattice deformer on them as well, and that is not shown in sculpt mode. Okay, we're now just lining up our little loops to make them conform to our mesh. And you can see how much I move the camera when doing this. It's quite disorientating, so I apologise for that. Okay, and we're about done with this part. Alright, so we're just sculpting in some damage on this box here. Don't worry so much about the inside of the box, it won't be seen. Just focus on the exterior and getting those little cracks and little details that you can focus on. You can see I actually even did the smiley face, as if someone's keyed a smiley face into the side of the box. Unfortunately, that was replicated on the inside, and yeah, had to be done again. So the problem with the pinch tool is if you don't turn on front faces only, it will do the faces on the opposite side of a solidify, or faces that are close to it anyway. So it just scratches all over the place. You can see your front face is only turned on. It does take a lot more pressure to have that work. However, you can turn off the lock next to strength, which will allow you to have a much higher strength value, and that will work for that. Okay, so moving on to the steering wheel. This one here we have a displacement, I believe, or no, we just used a multi-resolution in the end. And we've come through and just pinched in the edges and made them a little bit sharper. Just to add that bit of variation. Okay, so these are just the standard scratches on the surface. Just little scratches, nothing too big, but when the driver is sitting in the seat it will look much more realistic. Okay, so we're almost done with the steering wheel. Just working on the centre now. So you can see it doesn't take a lot of effort to add in scratches, but it does really help to add in that detail. I mean, this is at 8 times, but even then it only took I think about 5 minutes to go through. Okay, now for the windscreen, I wanted to have a cracked section here. I originally tried to turn this into a mesh and have a proper setup going on with solidify and stuff, but in the end it was just easier to have that crack as a separate mesh, and that will be seen fine when it is rendered. So you don't need to worry about triangulating and getting all this mess. There we go. So I've gone through and I've got a mesh here. And has a very subtle solidify on it, just to give it a bit of thickness. You know, you don't really need to bother with sculpting in details on the dash, but it's not particularly difficult to do. And also, I took that up to subdivision level 6. I eventually took it back down to level 4, as you see, but yeah, you really don't need a lot here. It's just to accent the details. Right, so repeating the process again on the floor mats. Notice that I add in some extra divisions first before I go and sculpt it, and that is fine. So the extra divisions just give you that extra level of detail.